Think about the force that gets you out of bed every morning. We usually call it happiness or finding our joy. But what if the very thing you are chasing is actually the mechanism keeping you spiritually asleep? What we commonly identify as happiness is really just pleasure. It is a fleeting physiological reaction, a release of dopamine triggered when we satisfy a specific desire or reach a socially programmed goal. We have constructed an entire society around facilitating this loop. You go to work, you earn a paycheck, and you spend it to satisfy a relentless queue of physical and psychological cravings. Millions of people moving in perfect lockstep to feed the next urge. We look at this cycle and call it life, but it is a state of mechanical enslavement, governed entirely by the ego, the I of pleasure. This pursuit operates on the same biological reward system used to train animals. We are conditioned to perform specific tasks in exchange for a brief chemical sensation of relief. Watch a dog humble itself, begging submissively for a single scrap of food. Humans perform the same transaction. We sacrifice our time, our values, and our free will, all to secure a temporary hit of gratification. By rendering us subservient to these biochemical hits, the ego ensures we remain too distracted to notice any higher form of awareness. To break out of this, we must distinguish between two forces. Pleasure is an ephemeral construct of the ego. True happiness is a stable, elevated state that belongs only to the awakened consciousness, the being. The ego's pursuit of pleasure infiltrates every center of the human machine. In the mind, it manifests as an addiction to the hoarding of information, obsessively consuming facts, fantasies, and constant thoughts just to feel the satisfaction of knowing. Even artistic creation and the consumption of classical music can be co-opted. If the focus is on the surge of emotional self-importance rather than conscious presence, even the masters become tools for the ego's gratification. It hijacks the motor center as well. Physical movement, exercise, or even the way we carry ourselves becomes a mechanical search for the high that comes from pride or physiological exertion. In the instinctive center, natural needs mutate into gluttony. Eating stops being about the conscious absorption of vitality and becomes a way to gorge on sensation, feeding the body mechanically while the consciousness is absent. The emotional center is just as compromised. The ego creates idealized projections of romance, feeds on the craving for social validation, and even extracts a dark pleasure from sadness and self-pity. Eventually, the ego demands more intensity. It escalates these drives into social vices and intoxication, chasing stronger surges of euphoria just to feel alive within the mechanical cycle. This constant firing across all 5 centers requires a massive expenditure of vital energy. Every time we chase a hit of pleasure, we are essentially leaking the very force needed for spiritual work. By the end of the day, our internal reserves are so depleted by these mechanical satisfyings that we have no energy left to actually awaken. The result is a life defined by tension and exhaustion. We are constantly anxious because we are constantly trying to keep our desires satisfied. Imagine your vital energy as a steady stream pouring into a vessel with no bottom. Every drop evaporates on contact, consumed by the ego's demands before it can ever be put to use. The desire for pleasure can never be filled. It only sleeps briefly before demanding more. We often fear letting go of this cycle. We mistakenly equate the absence of pleasure with a cold, empty existence or a form of depression. But the path to freedom requires what we call psychological death. This is the active practice of observing these mechanical desires as they arise and consciously choosing to eliminate them. To stop being a puppet of nature's involutionary cycle, one must be willing to let these mechanical cravings die. There is a paradox at play here. Starving the ego of its pleasure does not lead to a vacuum. It is the necessary step to make room for true life. When you remove the constant tension of chasing satisfaction, that energy is finally retained. It creates a stable internal clarity and a sense of elevation independent of external rewards. The difference is the geometry of the self. While the ego-driven life is scattered and jagged, vibrating chaotically with every new desire, the awakened mind pulls those same forces into a single integrated core. This is the stillness of the Sur. This happiness is a state of enduring liberation. It is entirely distinct from the brief, enslaving chemical hits we spent our lives chasing. This presents a choice: continue in the socially accepted, mechanical cycle of fleeting satisfaction, or begin a quiet, internal revolution. To remain in the cycle is to remain cogs in a machine, where the ego slowly drains your vitality until the end of your life. It takes a rare strength to look directly at one's ego, to observe the search for pleasure, and have the resolve to let it go. Stepping out of the illusion of pleasure is the only path to discovering the quiet, enduring ecstasy of true consciousness.